At our last boot camp in Vegas, a student asked, how can I get good with women really fast? So today we're going to answer that question. So guys, how do you get good with women fast?
I always teach students to get to the core of the feelings that are holding them back. So I look at approaching for your self-esteem, which takes out attachment to an outcome, helping you get more free in the approach, but also targeting what is stopping you, which is the feelings that are suppressed, in your subconscious mind. My favorite method is after each approach, and you have to approach, you have to take action, by the way, to get good fast. Sit down with the feelings that got stirred up and just literally relax into them, meditate them out, and this will actually change your behavior much more rapidly and knock out a lot of the approach anxiety as well.
Because a lot of times it's the feelings that are holding you back. And when you can not be controlled by your feelings, that's when you can take a lot more action and get good fast.
I'll just tell my personal story, which is go out all the time. Yeah. So I did a 90-day challenge, which means I went every single night in Las Vegas for 90 nights in a row. And then that automatically, like most of your problems can be solved by just going out consistently and approaching consistently. Because if you don't, it's one thing to go out and get in tune with the environment. I would say you could almost course correct yourself to some degree, but it's always gonna be better to have either some form of trainer or someone to coach or someone to check in with, because you may not even, I'm a good example of this. I used to have terrible tonality. I used to piss off everybody I talked to.
Well, I just totally resonate with what Josiah said. Feelings are one thing. The other thing is to know why you do what you do. And if your goal is to get good with women, the only antidote to this is to meet them very, very regularly. So I personally just enrolled in these events and those boot camps and just had mentors that guided me through this process. But on the other hand, I just changed my entire life to be in accordance with that purpose. That's it. If you have your end in mind and you do everything that is according to this way and never stop until you get there, is going to be fast. So the only thing that can work is just hold in mind that whenever you decide to approach a girl, go all in and don't leave just to leave. We call this don't self-ejaculate. just
Ejaculate.
Don't self-eject. I prefer don't self-ejaculate. Like just go all in, stay, and until she asks you to leave, then leave.
Here's the deal. You gotta have a goal, right? Like you said, you gotta go out a certain amount of time and approach a certain amount of women. You can't sit home and just read and do nothing. You gotta go out there and take action. When you have a mentor, when you're getting feedback, somebody who's an expert, it speeds up that learning curve exponentially. At the same time though, if you have a goal that's like too big, I'm gonna approach 30 women a day. Some people can do that, makes sense. That was my goal when I first started going out. Actually, it was 20 women a day, and I was all pumped up. I was all excited about it. And then the next day came 20 women, and I said, oh, I'll get to it tomorrow. That's gonna take some time. Next day came, same thing. I kept making excuses because the goal was too big. So you need a big goal that gets you out of your comfort zone and forces you to take action, but it also needs to make sense. If I would have said my goal is 1 approach a day or 2 approaches a day, I probably would have approached 10 or 20 women on some days because I would have built some momentum, and at least it would have got me out of the house taking some action.
I would also add to that, even if you want to meet women only during the day, if you want to get good fast at it, you gotta go out at night, because that's the only environment when you can get a lot of reference experience and just approach a lot. And you have all those shitty feelings that you were talking about that come up and that you have to process if you need to process them, or just brush through it and just push your barriers to the limit.
And it's kind of like playing a sport such as baseball, but playing with the lead bat. It's really heavy, it's hard. That's like going out at night and approaching women. Because there's so many distractions, there's so much going on. It's a harder environment. And then when you swing with the normal bat, the wood bat, you hit a home run. So when you go out during the daytime, it's much easier compared to the nighttime. And you just go up and have a normal conversation.
The other thing that stops guys from getting good really fast is a poor learning strategy. So when you have an intense attachment to outcome on goals, when you don't meet those goals, when you don't meet those expectations you have in the approaches that you're doing, especially in the beginning, it's going to drain your energy more and more and more, especially when you don't know the mistakes you're making. So this will actually create a downward spiral of momentum. And this is why some guys go out and they do a bunch of approaches and they feel terrible after. And some guys go out and do a bunch of approaches and they feel better and better and better because they're not taking it as seriously, they're not as attached. And as a result, not being as attached to the outcome, doing it for yourself, not for sex or dates or getting something from them, they are more fully self-expressed in their approaches. They can connect better, they don't take it as seriously, so they're more fun. I see a lot of students who have the poor learning strategies turn it into a chore and forget to actually enjoy the approach, enjoy the interaction, be excited to learn from your mistakes. Because again, when you have the poor learning strategy, you get critical of your mistakes, and that could actually put you into resignation, which is why it's so important to have a coach, or why it's so important to have somebody reflecting back any blind spots that you might have.
Yeah, and they're focused so much on that outcome, like you said. They want sex, or a date, or a girlfriend. And then when they don't have that, when they don't get the phone numbers or get the reactions they want, they feel so down, they beat themselves up and they give up. Versus when they just focus on, this is an investment in myself, this is learning, there's gonna be a learning curve. It's gonna suck in the beginning, just like any skill or sport. Like if you're learning an instrument, you're learning piano, it's gonna sound like crap in the beginning. You're not gonna be good, and it's gonna suck.
Yeah. When I started going out and I was able to connect with women, even if though it was in a friendly way, but have these interactions and conversations with really beautiful women that I met out and about, I was so happy about that. That energized me to keep moving forward. But if I approached it with that attitude of being attached, oh, it was just a conversation, but I didn't get her number and she didn't like me, I would have just spiraled down and I would have, like we said, went into resignation. So it makes it really difficult when you have it. I mean, everything has a polarity. You could look at it half glass full, half glass empty. Guys, really pay attention to how you're viewing the end result, how you're viewing the feedback you're giving yourself and the self-talk you have after every single interaction and approach, because it'll take you either on an upward spiral or a downward spiral. It'll take you up into flow state or down into depression and self-hatred.
Congratulate yourself after every interaction, no matter how short it was or how, bad you think it went. You took action, you did something, you learned something, and then just keep doing that. Focus on the process and the result will come.
Yeah. I think the best metaphor, there's two really good metaphors both you guys alluded to on there, which is you can relate it to playing a musical instrument. So piano is usually a really good thing. It usually takes you about a year of playing piano before you can play anything that's actually like other people recognize and you sound like you know something, like you're good. So piano's a longer stretch, but I think you have to be realistic about the expectations you have. If you're super high anxiety and you haven't approached any women ever and you have some other maybe trauma related stuff, you're not just gonna go walk out and be like, okay, I'm gonna be pimping in 90 days, guaranteed, right? So it's also time schedule. If you have lots of work, you don't have time to go out as much as we do. I mean, I was lucky and fortunate when I started that my work schedule was like just the right time period that I could still go out every single night. But getting back to the metaphor, so you have the piano metaphor, the musical instrument metaphor, but the one I usually relate it to in teaching is more the gym. Because the more consistent you are in the gym, the more results you see. It's hard for anybody to argue like your results in the gym because they'll see it. Within 2 weeks, you're starting to notice some changes in your body. It's a little bit different when we teach these guys because it's like, okay, did they stick to the regimen of going out? Minimum 3 days a week, but probably more like 6 or 7 if they're trying to get good fast. If you're trying to specifically get good fast. So you need to have a plan, like an actual schedule, like I'm gonna go out X amount of days for X amount of hours and this is all I'm gonna work on. I would highly suggest not being the guy who's like, well, I'm gonna just approach one girl when I get coffee today. Because if you want to get results fast, one a day is not going to cut it. And so consistency, having a schedule, and then just like you hit a plateau in the gym, like you're not getting any more weight on your bench press or your squats or your lifts or whatever, then you're just going to consult someone who has more knowledge than you and take their advice and continue on that way. So that's where a coach comes in, or a coach can be really helpful.
Yeah, we all had mentors and still have mentors in every aspect of our life.
Yeah, we coach each other.
You gotta have
The community
mentors.
part is also what made me get results very fast. Is if you can reach out to someone whenever you have a question, a problem, something that you need to get answered fast, and go just. It's simple. Like, I used to play soccer, and the hardest part is that you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So you need someone to tell you what you don't know, right? It's that simple. So like, you cannot become fast if you don't have some mentoring. You can pretend to, but you really can't.
I had a lot of negative reinforcement that pushed me. Now this is kind of tricky because like a lot of people just didn't have the same willpower that I do, right? Because it was either I did no FAP, and like my RAS, my reticular activating system, was just looking for that one girl that was looking for me, or I just had a lot of pain and I just kept going through it, and I was just like, there's something beyond this. Like I remember I would go to the bar and I would go out by myself, and there was this pride thing where I was just like, I have to do it for myself, and like I would have my hand on the handle and I'm like, fuck that. I'm just gonna do one more, even if I had that rejection. And the more that I did it, because like there's some people that learn by praise, and there's some people that learn by criticism. And you know, just how I was raised, it was always like, you don't do this right, then you have to do it right, right? And for me, having that ability to just go through that contrast, just had that prideful thing where I was just like, I'm just gonna prove it to the world that I can do this. I'm just gonna push it. I'm just gonna push it to my limits, and I'm just gonna trust the process. I'm just gonna keep going out as much as I can. Eventually, after like maybe 2 or 3 years, I found a community of guys, and they would push me, right? And there was guys that like I meshed well with, and there was guys that I didn't mesh well with. And eventually I was just like, all right, I do a lot better when I'm alone, right? And eventually I started finding guys that kind of like actually, you know, were at where I wanted. They wanted the same thing, and we would just suck together. And we would just do it all the time. We were just like, yeah, man, you suck, I suck. And it was just like this continuous thing where like eventually I would get my first makeout, and I was just like, oh my God, that's amazing. I would just keep sucking until I just got good eventually, man.
I can't. Right, if you just stop sucking, and stop sucking with other men, that's just got to be the worst right there.
As you said, it depends a lot on the students. Some people resonate a lot with challenges. That was my case. I resonated a lot with having someone that gave me something to do, and I want to prove to myself that I can do it too. Right, that got me a lot of results very fast.
Yeah.
Some people resonate a lot with getting results, so have less expectations and just get those results and work your way up.
small wins,
right.
and then they
But
turn
what
into
is
bigger
true
wins.
for everybody, especially if you want to get good fast, the problem with women is usually that guys struggle to find their own space among other men.
Yeah.
So having this community is just the key to become very good fast. That's it.
A mentor of mine told me that you're only as strong as the amount of quality men you have in your lives that you can take your stuff to. Because another thing that we get caught up in this modern feminized age is that men think that they can bring their problems to women and get actual feedback and help from them. But it's like bringing your computer to a mechanic, right? Like women can't understand the problem and experience of a man, just like a man can't fully ever understand the problem and experience of a woman. It's super important to be able to have other guys that you trust and who are solid that you can bring your stuff to, whether it's a coach, whether it's friends who have common goals, or you know, a mentor.
Actually, I wanted to go back to something Julian said, which is a really big key problem that I see with guys who don't have some amount of coaching, and it kind of stems from what you said of reframing what you find as a result, right? So we take the guys who are first starting, the guys who are new, we base all their stuff on outcome-independent goals, right? So do the approach, but don't worry about the feedback that she gives you so much. Just make sure you're gonna go do it. If you're using some particular line or some qualification or whatever you're doing, go out and practice it no matter what. Get the words out, get the body language fixed, do what you can. But there does come a point in time that a lot of guys don't get, where it's time to switch from that to being results-based, like real-life results. Because what happens to some guys is they get like, oh yeah, I did 20 approaches in that, I'm so awesome. And you're like, yeah, I got laid. And they're like, but but I did 20 results. You're like, all right, well, you've been doing this for how long now? Like, if you've been doing it more than 9 months, you've been doing years, it's your 2nd boot camp, your 5th boot camp, your 10th boot camp. And once they hit a certain point, you should literally be going for results. If anything else is just
that's this all-in mentality that's comes into play. Like that's the as in every sport, you cannot become a competitor if you're not a fighter. Right. You're gonna get there. It's a fight. You gotta win.
Yeah, you can only get your ass kicked so many times until you're just done with it. You know? Like, seriously.
A guy in Vancouver that we used to go out with, and he was doing cold approach for 3 years, and he's like, I've been doing 25 approaches a day for like 2.5, 3 years now, and I would like look at his approaches, and I'm like, dude, the guy was like so riddled in anxiety, and he was just rushing around girl to girl like a pit bull, but not getting anywhere with any of them. And he's like, oh, I'm not dependent on the outcome. I was like, yeah, but you should be a little bit concerned about the time you have in your life, right?
Yeah,
you want to get a little bit more advanced. I would try to give him pointers and tips, and so would, I made some of my best friends just going out and approaching girls, right? We would try to give them tips because we were progressing really fast, and even in there in a shorter time in that city. And he was not coachable at all, right? It's that ego thing, that pride thing of I could do it by myself. I'm a lone wolf, even though he was in a pack of wolves that were going out and doing this, right? It's so important to have that kind of openness and vulnerability. I mean, we could talk about that another day with women, but with other guys and saying, hey, I need help. What I'm doing is not working.
We have so much pride in this area of our life. Like, oh, I don't need help, but we do. We all needed help. There's nothing wrong with that.
I adopted that Mamba mentality where it's just like, these guys were getting a lot of results all the time, and I was just like, I guess this is what I have to do, man. Like, I have to work twice as hard, you know? Because, like, they would get it, and it was because I was so sensitive, like, the lights and the sound and the smell of vomit, and, like, it was just, like, too much for me, and, like, I would be overwhelmed half the time, and I'm just like, all right, gotta go out more. It's the only way I can desensitize myself to this whole entire process.
Yeah. Another cool way to keep this hardcore mindset of, I gotta get the results, the best way to go is to pay. Like, if you have to pay, you invest. And that's literally how I got good. It's just I basically put myself in debt to go on this journey. And I was forced to get results because it was such a huge investment for me that I had no choice.
Yeah.
So at this point, like, if you're back to the wall, you have to go and
fight.
Yeah, you got to move on.
You should always have a couple guys to go out with that are either one who is better than you and one who's not as good as you. Because the one who's better than you, he's going to teach you as much as he can because he wants you to be at his level so you can help him. Like, when we're out together at any time, it's more of a win-win situation unless we are purposely competing against each other, which we have.
That's true.
Right? But unless we're purposely doing that, most of the time we're going out with the same goal in mind and we want all of us to win. Right? So that guy's going to try to bring you up to his level, and then a part of learning and getting it like really solid and nailed down for yourself, especially for me, is when I started teaching it. So find a second guy who's not as good as you and try to raise him up to your level.
It's a ladder.
Right? So everyone gets to come up. At least everyone who wants to come up, you know?
I think having a wing or 2 wings is so important, at least for me when I first started working on this part of my life and going out during the daytime to meet women. It wasn't even so much that he taught me anything or helped me. I was actually a little bit better than him, but he would hit me up and say he used to go to Orange Coast College, which was rated like one of the best schools in the nation for like beautiful women, according to Playboy magazine. So he'd hit me up and he'd say, you gotta come today. There's so many beautiful women around. I'd give him a bunch of excuses. I'm busy. I gotta do all these things. I gotta work. And he'd say, no, you gotta come. You gotta come. So I would drive there, pay for parking because I wasn't a student. And then by the time I stepped on campus, I'd text him or call him, and he wouldn't pick up. He'd be on an instant date, or he'd be back in class. And so I'm like, well, I'm here. Might as well do something. And then I would end up doing 5 or 10 approaches and had tons of practice and, you know, got some great results. And it was just that push. And it's just like going to the gym. When you have a workout buddy, when you don't feel like going, they hit you up and they say, come on, you got to go today. And they inspire you and you guys push each other. I think that's so important to have at least one wing, if not that whole community. And again, a mentor is so important. I've had so many mentors in this part of my life, and I wouldn't be where I am right now without that.
Another really, really powerful Well, exercise that I employed and that I teach students is journaling approaches. You know, you do your 3 to 5 approaches a day, and that's great, but if you actually take a moment to reflect and journal what happened and maybe like what your 1% growth was in that really adds up over time, and it actually helps you step into more tension and take more risks in your approaches to kind of show yourself that, hey, this isn't as crazy or dangerous or as wrong as I thought. That mode of self-reflection really helps you transform your perceptions and what you think is possible.
As far as the self-esteem is concerned, now we've answered the question how to become good with women fast. But especially you that you're watching this video, you gotta ask yourself this question: why shouldn't I become good as fast as possible? You should be always aiming to get this part of your life handled as fast as possible, because that's a box that you have to check on your list, and that opens so many doors in your life that it makes sense. It's such a huge investment. Like, a man is, like, women are a huge part of the life of a man. That's for sure. So why waiting 10 years, 5 years, and doing things wrong, trying to make it complicated? Make it simple. Get a mentor, trust the process, go out, do it, and that's it.
So if you want to get mentored by any of us or all of us, then click the link down in the description and we'll help you out.
So if you guys like the content and hearing from these 5 badasses all at the same time, click that like and subscribe button and make sure you ring that notification bell for more awesomeness coming your way from the Attractive Man.
And leave a comment down below. Let us know what other videos you'd like to see on this channel, what other questions you have that you want us to answer for you. This is the Attractive Man team, and we'll see you in the next video.